the world of creative writing, there is an adage that's known as the golden rule, and it's this: show, don't tell. Anton Chekhov said it, expressed it beautifully, and perhaps you've heard this quote. He said, "Don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass." His point is that we shouldn't say, for example, oh, the suspect was anxious. No, you should show us with words that he has sweat glistening on his brow and his left eye is twitching imperceptibly. Then we know he's anxious because we've been shown. Now, I love words. I was an English literature undergrad, by the way, so those of you who don't know that. So that should just confirm it if you had any doubt in your mind. I love words, but piling up words just won't do. Many of you know that Father Tim is an excellent author, but he's also an excellent editor. And from time to time, even when I'm writing an email, I can hear him in the back of my head saying, too wordy, very concise. It's a good discipline. And of all the Gospels, Mark perhaps follows this adage better than any. Mark is an incredibly vivid gospel. It is not flowery or wordy. It's in fact the shortest gospel. And if you were to sit and read it through from beginning to end, which you can do, it's that short, you will realize that it's told in almost a breathless fashion. This happens and then this happens. The word that recurs again and again is immediately. Immediately the disciples followed Jesus. Immediately he went to the next town to proclaim the good news. It's as though we can barely keep up with Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. It's brimming with powerful, arresting images, and today's Gospel is an excellent example of that. We have two vivid images that are attention-grabbing, if nothing else. First, Jesus has an interaction with a Gentile woman, a Syrophoenician, and their exchange is confusing to us, if we're honest, because we think of Jesus embracing the outcast, but in this gospel, he seems to be pushing her away. It's confusing, and yet it's there for a reason. And then we have a description of how Jesus heals a deaf and mute man. And what does he do? He uses his own saliva in this healing. Again, an arresting visual. We don't quite get it, but it certainly holds our attention. Now, Mark is written this way on purpose. Mark shows Jesus moving swiftly because he's moving swiftly to accomplish the work that the Father has given him. He's moving swiftly to Jerusalem and to the cross, to suffering and to being raised again. This is Jesus' call. There's an urgency to the gospel. But there's something else that Mark wants to show us about Jesus in today's passage. And it's a theme that runs throughout the gospel. It's something that scholars call the messianic secret. Have you ever heard that phrase? In German, it's the Messias-Geheimnis. And someone can correct my pronunciation after the service. But that's this idea of keeping what Jesus is doing under wraps a bit. Listen to this. In verse 36, it says, Jesus ordered his followers to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, he has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak. At least 3 times, Jesus explicitly tells people not to share with others what he's doing in this gospel. Why? What is Mark showing us? Well, Mark's gospel wants to show us that Jesus is the true Messiah, the anointed one for whom Israel had been searching for centuries. But Jesus' messiahship is not what they expected. Jesus' messiahship is not about pomp. It's not about showy displays or lots of circumstance. Jesus' messiahship is not military or even political per se. Jesus' messiahship is not about miracles alone. It's not about getting God to do for us what we want. No, even Jesus' miracles serve a purpose. They're not just to amaze and delight us, but they bear witness to his true identity. You see, we heard in the passage from Isaiah that the Messiah would do all things well. He would cause the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak. He would bless and show a new way of living. Jesus' work is to focus on the redemption and reconciliation given to him by his Father. His messiahship was not about empty words, but about deeds. Mark is a show, don't tell gospel because Jesus is a show, don't tell Messiah. Now, this may seem a little counterintuitive to us because aren't we supposed to tell others about Jesus? I mean, aren't we called to share the good news with people who haven't heard? And yes, that is absolutely the case. But we don't do that by piling up words. We do it by how we live our lives. Words are critical. They are important, but actions speak far louder. You know, Jesus' miracles were not magical treats for our delight. They demonstrated who he really was. And we too are called to demonstrate who we really are in the way that we treat one another, in the way that we do business, go out about our business in the marketplace, the way we gather, the way we return to God again and again, even when we stumble and fall. Deeds speak louder than words. So why would Jesus do this? Why would he live a life of deeds and not words? And what is it that this means for us here today? It means this, that not only are we to live out our faith, live out loud, as some might say, but Jesus also longs for us to love and seek him, not just for what he does for us, but for who he is. Yes, God is a miracle-working God. And yes, God cares about our needs and our desires. But just as you and I long to be loved, not for our performance or what we do, but for who we are, so God longs to be loved and sought for who God truly is, not just for what God can do for us. This brings a whole new level of intimacy in our relationship with the divine when we learn, as Jesus did, to seek God in truth, in deed, in righteousness, in love, focused on who God is and his greatness, and not just on what God can accomplish for us. Friends, Mark is a show, don't tell gospel, because Jesus is a show, don't tell Messiah. Let us learn from him. Let us live our faith as he does, together along the way. Amen.